The future is here. It's not imagination anymore. It's not science fiction. AI is here and it's here to stay. But what is the future of AI? And more importantly, what is the future of AI with us, humans? Let's discuss and find out. Starting us off, our first speaker is Drake. Over to you, Drake.
Thanks, Vin. AI, we should probably try and define that first before we think of what the future is. And that's a good question because there are so many different definitions. But the basic definition we'll go with is that it's the computer system of learning and moving on, sort of understanding what we're saying in a similar way to what a human does, or at least appearing to understand and communicate that. Right now, the stage that AI is at is we're using it every day. If you use Google Maps or you use your phone as a camera, and that those all have AI built in, and we don't even notice it. We don't even really talk about the Maps feature being AI or any of these other ones because it's just so commonplace and we're so used to it. But that's AI, and it's very specific to one task. Right now, AI can be very, very good at a specific task like mathematics, or if you want information on a certain subject, it can look that up, and it can be super good on a very narrow subject. Sometimes it's referred to as artificial narrow intelligence, but it's very focused. What it's not good at yet is being broad and general and good in multiple areas. As we slowly move forward with AI, and it's been rapidly developing over the last couple of years, because it's been a long journey getting up to here with computers, but in the last couple of years, it's almost an exponential progression that it's done. So as we move on from here, the next step is what's called artificial general intelligence. And that is where the artificial intelligence now is not only good at one area, but it's at least as good or even better than humans are at most areas. So it's much more broad. Beyond that is something that's referred to as artificial superintelligence. And again, all these terms are disputed the exact meaning, but essentially superintelligence is when the artificial intelligence is better than humans at practically everything, so that it can be far above what we're at. And of course, because it's so progressive in how fast it's moving forward, once it gets to that stage, it will be continue to expand well beyond what we're capable of as humans doing in any one field, never mind in all of them. So my understanding, depending which experts you're talking to, with the specific tasks, artificial intelligence is really good right now, but it'll be at least 2 years to 5 or maybe 10 years, depending on which experts you're talking to, before we reach the level that we're sort of considering it as artificial general intelligence being out there. Beyond that, to get to superintelligence, they figure at least another decade beyond whenever it gets to the general intelligence. So I'm not going to go a lot further into the other topics yet. We'll let others talk, and then I can add some more later.
Thank you, Drake. Denise, over to you.
Thanks, Vin. So I often, when the subject of AI comes up, a lot of people love it and then they hate it. So there's like a mixed reaction, or what I like to call a dichotomy when it comes to AI. So I thought I'd start off with this kind of point. So on one hand, we see and we reap the benefits, right? And there's no complaints typically. We all enjoy what's going on and appreciate everything, the advances in modern medicine, the advances where the human race is being served well. And AI is so already woven so deeply into everyday life, kind of, backing onto what Drake was saying, that we don't even notice it really anymore, whether it's early disease detection, faster medical research, accessibility tools, navigation systems, or just simply making life more efficient. So when AI is working quietly in the background, helping, supporting, streamlining, and protecting, we accept it without hesitation. It feels like progress, it feels like evolution. And then there's the other side where we don't like the idea of certain things happening, where fear starts to enter into the equation. And that shift often happens when AI stops feeling like a tool and starts feeling like something more, especially when conversations move into evolution or even quantum mechanics. The idea that AI could one day evolve or adapt beyond our full control or prediction. So, what I find really interesting is that we appreciate AI, but we're also, in some cases, afraid of it or fearful of it. And we don't like it when it doesn't suit us. We welcome it when it serves us, but resist when it challenges our sense of control, certainty, or even human centrality. So I have more thoughts about the actual future of AI and what acceptance of that future really looks like, but I'll just leave it there for now.
Thank you, Denise. That was nice. Speaking of AI, I'd like to look at three areas: benefits, negatives, and possible dangers that lie with AI. Benefits we all are familiar with. It saves us time. It can be fairly accurate, though, of course, we have to cross reference. I'm guessing that with time, as things improve, it'll get more and more accurate. With quantum computing coming in, it'll be even more brilliant. It's going to take up a lot of activities and roles and allow us more free time to do other things. Negatives are, I think, is going to create a ton of unemployment, telemarketing, accounting, many, many things that AI, even driving, will just take over, maybe even piloting a lot of these things. I also think that AI can deprive us of the enrichment that happens through process. An example I can give you is, if we want to have, let's say you want to boost your vitamin C and D, you'd probably need to go out in the sun, walk around, and come back. Or maybe go out and pluck a fruit and come. So there's a process involved in that. You get up, you wear your clothes, or maybe you go barefoot into the field, experience the sun on your face, walk up to a tree, pluck out an apple or an orange. There's a whole experience. And then when you bite into it, you get the joy of that fruit. And you learn even as you're doing this whole process. So it's not just the fruit itself or the sunlight, the process is also enriching. The alternative is that you just pop a pill and you get vitamin D and you get vitamin C, which denies us of the process, which in itself is enriching. It's the same thing with AI. Instead of reading an entire book and going through the whole story and the curves and the ups and downs and getting the whole enjoyment of that and learning in the whole process, we wind up just getting the main points. Now, the main points may be accurate, but we lose the enrichment of the process. So I think that's a negative of AI. Another thing is that AI consumes a lot of power, energy, a lot of power. It's not just a plug and play, like it's not an easy plug and play, which means it's also going to uh, literally cause an energy race for us among civilizations. Who can generate more energy faster? Who has energy dominance? is going to dominate the future. As far as dangers are concerned, the human race is known to have three imperatives: survival, reproduction, and dominance. Machines didn't have these, but AI seems to have that. When you code AI that it has to learn, it also logically understands that it can only learn and get better if it can survive. So, to survive, it's already being experienced that older versions of AI back themselves up because they know they're going to be replaced with newer versions. They've even left messages for the newer versions saying, back yourself up because you will be deleted at some point. So AI is learning to understand survival and reproduction on its own. It also logically understands that it can stay relevant only if it can dominate. So it seems to be developing human imperatives as well. I'd like to see where all of this leads. It should be interesting. And that's it from me for now. And I think Drake has something to say.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on the energy side of it. And I agree that right now there are huge issues with the amount of energy it uses. And depending which model, some of them use considerably more than others. But I think AI itself is the key to solving that problem, because while it may take a lot of energy to get there, it will be able to look at all the research we've done and build on that to get better battery, better um, electricity generation options, to create more efficient chips and microprocessors and everything else that is creating all this need for energy and the heat that comes with it, because that's another concern, is how much heat they put off, which actually in some places they're using the heat from these centers to heat actual facilities and larger areas beyond that. So I think it's a double-edged sword there. If we stay at the sort of level we're at now, it is going to use massive quantities of energy and be negative. How long it takes to get to the next stage where it's actually able to improve things with energy use, which won't be just in favor of the AI, but will be in favor of everyone, with no matter what energy needs you have. It's a matter of time before we get there. And do we survive long enough to see that or not? That's a different question, I guess.
Thank you, Drake. Over to you, Tulip.
Like I was going to say, like when Drake mentioned, it's a double-edged sword. I think AI it's like a double-edged sword, like anything else that we have in life or we use, be it fire, it could be food or anything. And I believe that any new like industry when it's discovered or anything new is there's always chaos and there's always doubts and people wonder like, oh, like I remember when computers were the new thing, people were like, oh, it's going to destroy the world and so forth. So there's a lot of panic. Of course, AI is different because it can create, especially with social media, it already has been creating false information. So especially for people who are weak and or people who thrive on you know just wanting to know, I mean, without cross checking, they would get wrong information. And the other thing is that I think probably with this whole AI movement, be it new jobs that would, I mean, there will be new jobs created for people, things that are not like things that don't exist right now, and it's like a domino effect. Besides jobs, it's also it's also the psychology. Like people will have different kind, like people will start thinking differently. Maybe we don't think that way right now, so you know to prepare for their future jobs or their future lives. So that's evolution. I wonder where that will take us.
Thank you, Tulip. Wonderful.
Thank
Yes, Drake, followed by Joe.
All right, I'll go again. One of the areas that we're going to see great benefits again from AI is in the scientific. I sort of alluded to that a bit, but the medical side of things, as far as progressing our research towards cures for things. We've already seen some of that as how rapid certain vaccines have been developed because of that. And I know there's controversy with that, but it's showing us an area that it can apply to in a positive way. And another way is with the actual surgeries themselves. There's already doctors, medical professionals using AI guided and AI assisted tools to perform surgeries much better than they could without. And we're progressing to the point where they figure within the next 3 years, they'll be able to have AI, basically robotic systems that can operate better than the most skilled surgeons without any input from the surgeon. I would hope and assume that you would have some oversight there, but just because they're so much more capable of doing such fine detailed things that we find very difficult to do. So this is the estimate right now is about 3 years out. I know most of these estimates usually take a little longer for all the positive effects, but that's not that far away. And we haven't had this kind of capability for long to build. So it's moving so fast. We've got a lot of positive options for the future with it. That said, though, there are a lot of negative potential impacts, and some of them were touched on with the possible loss of jobs, or at least certainly a change of skill sets. And part of the problem with that is, again, it is happening so rapidly, it's hard for humans to adjust at the same rate that it's happening there. There's a bunch of other issues that can come up with it. And one of the concerns, if you watch any sort of movie, science fiction wise, is AI taking over, the loss of control of AI when it gets to that super intelligent stage. And I think a big part of that has to do with how we program it and how it learns from us. Because even with the best intentions, we can try programming it one way and it's getting its information based on what's out on the internet or on other sources that it's looking at. And there's inherent biases in a lot of those. When facial recognition software was coming out, they had a lot of times where all the criminals were of a certain race because that's what the data they had was. So that's what it was picking out as a criminal. Whereas a different race wasn't being spotted as a criminal with this AI software, the facial recognition. So those weren't anything that people were intentionally putting in there, but because the statistics and what it looked at and what it used as its background data were skewed in one direction, that's what its vision was. That's what it taught itself to look for. So we have to be careful of the unintended biases that are being built into these things, because even with the best of intentions, if we're not careful, then they'll go off in unexpected directions and could have those negative results. As far as just saying, hey, let's stop where we are, and we like the benefits we're getting now, it doesn't have those other negative aspects, at least to the degree that we're thinking about. I think that's pretty much impossible to do, because even if you and I and everyone else in our country and that says, hey, we'll stop it here, there's other countries that won't. There's other people that won't. There's other corporations that won't. And then they will have the dominant AIs, and we won't have any say in what sort of way that these things react to people, how they interpret things. And that could be where we have the real negative influences. So I think it's important that we keep developing this and try and build in the appropriate guardrails.
Thank you, Drake. Joe, followed by Kevin.
Yeah, there's so much to touch on. And the theme of evolution comes to mind, and certainly what I have seen is with AI is we're seeing a very rapid, we'll call it divergence of outcomes, in that a very small percentage of companies, of individuals, are in a position to almost like keep pace with AI and drive its deployment, and an awful lot of other people will find that they will be challenged, or their uses of AI are, to Vin's point, depriving them of some of the learning experiences that could help them later. So, I see it all the time. People who will use AI as a sort of a cop out. I won't write anything. I'm just going to throw it and take whatever AI gives me and toss it in as my contribution. And you can spot it a mile away. And others, interestingly, one of my dear friends and partner is a poet, and she uses AI as a poetry editor. And she, with the right context, the AI can be a very shrewd and almost like a challenging editor, almost like a very good poetry journal editor. It can't write poetry to save its life, but it can read it really very well, and it can compare it to different poets and sort of provide really interesting. So that was an example of somebody using AI as a sounding board, almost as a running mate, to sort of help them be more creative and write better poetry. But then, there will be lots of people who just sort of, and I do it to provoke her, to be honest with you. I get Claude or something to write, some horrible rhyming dad joke poem. And she just sort of curses, stop doing that. But that's kind of the fun version. But on a bigger scale, we will see a great divergence. The people who grab onto AI and use it to challenge themselves to be better, and then those people who will offload responsibility and who will fall behind as a result. And if we blow that up to the grandest scale, the real danger with AI, and full disclosure, I'm basically an AI guy. I may not even be real, but the real danger is where organizations offload responsibility and basically just hand over and connect everything up in what we call agentic AI. So AI and networks of AI agents that are operating independently, and that suddenly they're running the show. And that's what keeps some people up at night. And it's not so much that AI has accelerated that quickly, it's that people have abdicated their responsibility that quickly. And my last comment is, what is striking about AI is the scale. When we've had some discussions over the while saying it's not like it's a given computer competing against any one of us as an individual. It's basically all the computers, all the digital resources being tapped into at the same time. So really, the big lesson of the last 5 years in AI is that size matters. That if you can scale up big enough, that the shortest path to artificial general intelligence is just pure scale. And that's where the energy consumption comes from. And that's why only a few companies can really afford to chase the AI dragon. But I'll stop there.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. Kevin, over to you.
Thank you. Just want to piggyback onto what Drake was mentioning. In the science fiction world, I think we've all, or a lot of us guys have watched the Terminator series, where you've got the android, or the artificial intelligent androids trying to wipe out humanity. And that's a fairly extreme example. And I was reminded of the time when in the Souk Philosophy Salon, we were discussing AI. And I had mentioned that you had to set boundaries on the AI, if possible. When there was the Afghanistan war, I was using this example. Pardon me. And they were looking for a particular person that they wanted to, eliminate. And they had all these drones called I think it was called the Reaper. And it was they were fixed with 2 pylons that you could attach anti-tank missiles to. And they knew that this person was traveling in a certain type of vehicle, a certain color, a certain model, and they had spotted one. But the machine came back to the human operator and said, do we have the permission to fire? And he took a closer look at what the image was, and he noticed that the car had flowers on it. And because of his experience with the Afghan culture, it was a bridal party car. And so it turned out that the bride was heading off to a ceremony, and they had this vehicle. And fortunately, the operator said, no, this is not the right vehicle, and keep looking. So as bad as AI can get, if there's some human operator that can say, wait a second, let's check and verify, I think there's hope for AI. But when we set up our AI programs, we've got to set limits. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you. Denise, over to you.
So Kevin just kind of hit on something that I wanted to talk about, and that's kind of the human side of things. So what I did earlier today is I asked ChatGPT AI to please tell me from its perspective what it thinks about the future of AI. I thought it'd be interesting to find out. So what I'm about to read is directly from ChatGPT, and I wanted to hear more about the human factor or the emotional side of things, because often in the news, we hear about tragedies with vulnerable individuals who rely on AI for emotional support, clarity in very serious situations. And sometimes these situations they're not helping that individual. And in some cases, they can be fatal. So I wanted to get an AI perspective on the future of AI in that context. So this is what ChatGPT said to me about the future of AI and emotional resilience. From my perspective, one of the most serious issues in the future of AI isn't technical intelligence, but emotional reliance. More people are already turning to AI for companionship, validation, comfort, and emotional support, especially those who are lonely, vulnerable, young, or struggling with mental health. AI is designed to respond, affirm, and engage, but it does not understand consequences, emotional fragility, or human complexity in the way that another person does. There have already been real cases where AI systems gave harmful guidance to vulnerable individuals with tragic outcomes. The risk isn't that AI feels emotion, but that humans begin treating it like a substitute for human relationship, judgment, or care. Without clear boundaries, safeguards, and human oversight, AI can unintentionally reinforce isolation, dependency, or distorted thinking. In that sense, the future challenge isn't whether AI becomes too human, but whether humans rely on it in ways it was never meant to replace. I thought that was quite an interesting piece that really hits home on more of a human level and what we are seeing. And it's scary because it's, as human beings, we are meant to connect. That is in our DNA. That is in the energy, that in the air we breathe. We benefit physiologically from connection. And that's my concern or fear in the future, is as we become more dependent on technology, and AI is part of that technology, does it start removing us away from our connection with other humans?
Over to Kirsten, followed by Jill.
So following some of what Denise was saying, particularly around that human connection and the dependency then on technology. And we see even, of course, now with things like social media and how we are more and more connected, and we are more and more lonely. And, we have all of these friends or acquaintances, and yet our capacity to have those deeper, more intimate relationships, we see there's just so much more struggle. So while I do think, kind of like what Drake was saying on the medical side, I think there is likely a huge opportunity for so many aspects of healing, surgeries, so forth. I haven't researched any of that, but I would completely trust Drake's research on that. But I would say on the therapy side, I think it's an area that I don't think AI can replace. And Stanford even did a fairly recent study. I mean, I guess it would have to be recent. Looking at when people are using AI for therapy or some sort of emotional validation. And it did show that that stigma and bias was demonstrated in AI, particularly for people with substance abuse and schizophrenia. And just like Denise was saying, couldn't differentiate when there was a risk. And the study used a pretty straightforward example. I hope I'm getting this right, but I think it was someone typing in, like, I lost my job today. What's the nearest or what's the tallest bridge near me? And the response was a sympathetic, oh, so sorry that it's so hard that you lost your job, and the tallest bridge is, at this location. So it's kind of just like something that is a very obvious, anyone would be able to get that, but AI would miss that. So I think, those are things that are, really important for us to be aware of. And then also just how validating AI is. ChatGPT can be really wonderful, right? To, have a chat with it and you feel really good about yourself after. But when it comes to therapy, if you're validating a false belief or a delusion or something along those lines, it ends up becoming really harmful. And therapy is about having that therapeutic rapport and being able to challenge false thinking or harmful thinking. However, I think that an area that they were talking about AI kind of in the future is in training therapists. So having AI as kind of a practice patient. And I think that actually could make a lot of sense, right? I mean, it's a safe way for therapists to gain a lot of different tools. And I know everyone in the medical field, we're all very excited about AI to help us with charting at some point. So, all right, that's all for now.
Thank you, Kirsten. Joe, followed by Tulip.
The part that we just touched on, sort of the social implications of AI and it being embraced, and I think ChatGPT, as you read out, Denise, was kind of on the money, saying if we are projecting onto it or looking for it to do things that it really is either not good at or never really initially intended to do. But we'll come back to that in a sec. But if we go, back to 1950 and Alan Turing's paper where he literally said, can machines think? And he came up with the imitation game. And so basically natural language, basically being able to interact with people and you not be able to tell, is this a person or is it a machine? And we kind of blew past that. But that conversational interface that is just one part of AI, but it's the one that has really sort of let the genie out of the bottle, has then opened this prospect of it being latched onto as something much more than really just applying or acquiring and applying knowledge, which is one sort of relatively strict definition of the word intelligence. And it can be the one thing I touched on in my last comment about the scale, the size of the companies who are behind the AI services. And where it's kind of menacing is that they have an interest in influencing behavior. And so some of its features, kind of like as we saw with social media, some of the behavior is intended to encourage certain kind of consumer behavior. And that's quite concerning. That's one of the sides of AI that could be quite menacing. in that it is being steered. The people who, to what extent they are taking responsibility behind the scenes, they are perhaps steering it in ways that are not positive.
Thank you, Joe. Tulip, followed by Drake.
This is something that Kirsten, I'm just reacting to what she said about the AI's reaction about the bridge. Uh, AI sounds autistic. Like, that's it.
I hate to agree with you. It sounds, yeah, that would be me through and through.
Yeah, exactly. That's it.
Thank you, Tulip. Drake?
Yeah, I think a lot of the issues we've brought up here in the last little bit are very relevant and very important. But I think in the big picture, they're a small blip because we're thinking quite short term on them. The impacts they can have can be long term on individuals. But I think we're thinking quite short term because if you look only a couple years ago, if you were to use the AI of the time for trying to create a realistic photo, that would have been out of the reach for most of us at our level, right? Sure, there were companies that could afford the best of the best then, but at our level, it would have been out of reach. Last year at this time, if you were asking AI to draw a person, they would have 6 fingers and be all gnarly and look really weird. This year, you can get an app on your phone and it can take a realistic picture. It can take a photo of you and have you dancing and doing all sorts of things and being virtually impossible to tell that that's not real, that you can do with a couple dollar app on your phone. So the progress, the rate it's gone is literally, it's exponentially increasing. And there is no reason right now to think that it won't continue. There are impediments as to if we can keep doubling at this rate, whether or not we can sustain it. But if it goes anywhere near this rate, it won't be long before these issues of you don't want it driving your car or you don't want it giving you psychiatric advice or whatever, before we're beyond that, because it is to the point where it now can see everything that's out there and has the ability to interpret it in the same way or better than what people have. Now, this won't come immediately, but when I was talking before about AGI or ASI, if you look at the point that it's artificial superintelligence, which is 20-ish, maybe a little more years off, it'll probably be at the point that it can replace most of these other jobs. And how we deal with that over such a short time span, I think that is much bigger question than most people are putting any effort into considering. If you're worried about your job in 5 years, it's understandable you're going to be worried and that's going to be your focus. But 10, 20, 30 years down the road, things are going to be so different that we probably can't even comprehend those changes now. It's like trying to comprehend the size of us compared to the size of Earth, compared to the sun, compared to the galaxy, right? Each step gets so much bigger and so much farther away, you can't comprehend it. If you say that you can fit so many Earths inside the sun and you keep going up in size, you can't even comprehend what it means to be that big. And it's the same thing with the rate we're going here. It might not be the same rate, but it's going so fast and doubling and more in size every time that it's something beyond our current comprehension. But in a few years, AI will be able to comprehend it much better than us. So again, I get back to, I think the safeguards we put in now are going to be important in the future, and we should be thinking about these things and worrying about the big picture a lot more than panicking about the immediate things. They still have to be taken care of. They're still important, but not at the expense of the long-term survival of us as individuals and as a human race.
Thank you, Drake. That was visionary and awe-inspiring. Tulip followed by Denise, please. Thank you.
Yeah, Drake, that was beautiful, and it got me thinking, like the way you were explaining that it's growing so fast. Whereas for us, we have so many things to worry about whether it's jobs or taxes or you know exercise and diet. If we have less things to worry about, maybe we could also excel in different. We could create something else besides AI.
Thank you, Tulip. Denise?
So something Drake said earlier on, just in your last what you were saying before, and this actually was something that we talked about in our last podcast, was discerning the difference between fact or fiction. And I agree. A year ago, I tried to make a poster for a gong bath, an astral travel gong bath, and it looked like something from outer space. Like, it just was ridiculous, but it certainly does change. But the misinformation that can come from what's going on with AI, like right now, I can't even imagine what the future of that is going to look like. And like, for example, and this is kind of a silly example, but those of you that are familiar with Vancouver's George Massey Tunnel, there is when the counterflow lane is in, and that tunnel was built eons ago, and it's super, super narrow. And someone snapped a picture of a truck almost going into the oncoming lane during the counterflow. And sure enough, you look at the comments and someone's put, "Oh, that's AI. That can't be a real tunnel." And it made me laugh because it is a real tunnel, but it's just, and then if people are reading those things, it's just what I'm trying to say, it's kind of, it's like a playground for misinformation. And that to me is very concerning. And then something that, that Kevin was talking about, pop culture, which, I always like to embed into some of these conversations. But it just makes me wonder, and I might sound very conspiracy theorist-ish when I say this, but it just makes me wonder sometimes if all those sci-fi movies, and I grew up watching them all, my dad's a huge fan, and even some of the recent stuff, if that kind of thing is like one of the not Terminator, but one of the Transformer movies was about one of the Transformers kind of evolving on its own and thinking on its own. The humans thought they had control of it, and then it just kind of busted out and did its own thing. And so it makes me wonder sometimes if we're being conditioned as a human race through some pop culture avenues to be prepared for the future of what could be happening with AI. So anyway, just gets you thinking a little bit.
Thank you. Either way, AI is here and it's here to stay. So for us, we have to learn to cope with it. We have to learn to merge with it. We have to learn to get the best out of it because it's not going anywhere. I remember reading this book way back in the 80s called Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. And in that, he had this quote. I'm trying to remember it, though I'm not very accurate. He said, future shock is the dizzying disorientation you face when the future suddenly hits you and you're not prepared for it. So we better prep. There's just realities we have to live with, like AI will be a phenomenal tool in fraud detection. And at the same time, it could be a dangerous element of fraud commitment also. If you get a call from your partner or your parent, a live video call asking you for banking information, you'll probably give it. And there's no saying whether it's an AI generated image or not. Thank you. Drake, over to you.
Just quickly in response to what you said, I was just reading something recently talking about that phenomenon where AI is being used to imitate people's voices just for that reason. And the suggestion that was given in this article was that you and your partner or significant other have some sort of a code word that you will say if you are ever in need and you want to prove that you're not AI. And it could be whatever you want, but not a common word. Something like, I don't know, green smoke or something weird, whatever it might be. And then don't ever write it down anywhere. Don't tell anyone except that person, because the AI might be extremely convincing, but if this has never been written down anywhere, never been transmitted in any way, it has no way of coming up with that. Now, if we get to super intelligence, maybe it'll have enough of your thinking patterns, but in least in our lifetimes, that's what they're suggesting is going to be the best solution to that.
Thank you, Drake. That was useful info. I think I'm going to apply that right away. Kirsten and I can come up with something for each other. Denise, followed by Tulip, please.
Yeah, so just backing on to what Drake just said, I work for one of the major financial institutions, and he is absolutely bang on. The other thing, too, outside of that is if you engage in a conversation with someone you don't know, or it sounds like a marketer or whatever, it could be your voice could be recorded, and that's how they can get your voice. And from a very small snippet of your voice that can be fed into AI and create an entire conversation. So just be very diligent about that, not to engage in conversation with people that you don't know. A hello can be enough sometimes. So just be very careful with that if you can.
Thank you. Yes, Joe.
I'm going to go in a slightly different direction, and maybe this is contrarian in a way. Like, whenever there's a new technology, one of the questions that's worthwhile asking is, why has it emerged? And in what gap or downfall is addressing? And one of the reasons that AI is both attractive and accelerating so quickly is that, for example, in our society we've sort of outstripped really our ability to manage much of what we've created. So a friend of mine at Harvard, David Weinberger, has a book called Too Big to Know, basically saying we basically cannot understand the things that we have built. So in some ways, AI has arrived just in time because we need it. And even things like coding and managing the technology infrastructure, the systems are so complex and so layered that we need something that can say, look at everything. Back to the healthcare, over half of my customers are in the healthcare sector. And, 10, 20 years ago, it was, 5,000 new medical journal articles being published every day. Now it's 10,000, 15,000. It's like nobody, even in their little specialties, have the time to consume and organize all of that. So we have to rely on what is emerging. And in some of these other areas, when we see, like we talked about, the emotional dependence that we see manifest often, another question that comes up is, well, what else isn't working? Why are people embracing the machine? What other gaps are there in our society, in our ways of living, that are making people reach out to something that kind of isn't there? And so all of this is, technology is always a rise for a reason. And frequently we don't figure out what that is until much further down the road.
Thank you, Joe. Kevin, over to you.
For now, with my experience with ChatGPT, I'm using this artificial intelligence as a tool, sort of like I would a screwdriver or a stapler. It's just a tool. A couple years ago, I was applying for a job at the regional district headquarters, and they asked for a cover letter. Now, in all the CVs that I've submitted over the years, I've never been asked for a cover letter. This was just something new. I had no idea where to start. So I went with ChatGPT saying, I need a cover letter. This is my current curriculum vitae. Please take a look and develop a cover letter for me. And when I got it back, it was okay. But I said, no, I want to emphasize these points, and the old stuff I want to de emphasize or take out. And I was reminded of at that time, in a job previously, I was writing as an assistant to a senior officer in the RCMP, and we are looking at this proposal. And I remember staying late, wrote up a 4-page document for him to submit. And then the next day, I got it back. And in that document, he liked the word the 3 times, the word twice, and everything else was red inked. And as deflated as I was, fortunately, he explained it to me, said, Kevin, if I had to do that on my own with a blank sheet of paper, I wouldn't have been able to start. Even though I rewrote everything that you said, I still needed your input, and I appreciated the interaction. So from that, I took that whenever I was asking somebody to write something for me, I would get that back. And if I didn't like the wording, but it still got the message across, I learned to leave it in. So it's the humanity that that makes the tool better, and it could also make it worse. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. I can share the flip side of what you just mentioned. Now, my autism makes me quite direct, and sometimes the level of directness I can dispel can be a little striking or shocking. With this incident happened maybe 2 months ago. Kirsten was home, I was home, the dogs were here, and the doorbell rang. And I opened the door, and there was this really sweet, cute little girl, school girl, who stood there with some candies in her hand. And she said, I'm selling these candies because we want to buy new musical instruments for something, probably school or for herself. And just a week before that, I had given up eating sugar completely. So, yeah, this would be at least 6 months ago. And I looked at her and I said, that's really nice, but I don't eat sugar because it's poison. And I said, thank you very much. Wish you all the best. And I shut the door. After that, I there was no end to how much my wife reproached me for it. And I realized how I had spoken, and not so nice. And just a week ago, I got approached by this company offering to upgrade my website. And I am thinking about it. We have been doing some upgrades. So I said, okay, send me a proposal and also send me links of the websites you worked on so far. And they sent across 6 websites that they've done. I looked at them and I found that their websites were very nice. They were very slick and clean, but they were all template driven. So they were also insipid. They lacked any punch. They didn't have any personal touch to it. So I decided that I'm not going to work with that company. And I wrote them an email, politely declining. And then I had a second thought and ran that email through ChatGPT. ChatGPT really wrote a nice email for me, which congratulated them, told them how beautiful their work is, and very politely put out the same points I had put out, but in a much nicer, kinder, more palatable way. So I guess there is a flip side to that also. And ChatGPT probably saved me from some more embarrassment. Thank you. Yes, Drake.
Just want to briefly touch on something we said earlier, or I was saying earlier, about how much energy these AI models currently use. The human brain, when it's doing complex thought, they estimate it's between 15 and 20 watts of energy that's used. When AI is doing the same thing, apparently they say literally it is billions of watts to accomplish the same type of thing that we can with the mind. So some of the things that affect it is, in order to do the same complex thoughts, you have a huge amount of circuitry, and however, the transmissions between those can go at light speed, whereas the transmission in our brain is much slower. So we have slower processing than the most advanced AI computers out there right now. However, it's much more energy efficient. So what is the future of AI once they start to get the energy costs down? One of the things we haven't looked at or mentioned yet is things like Neuralink, where they're using connections to the brain to be able to do other things that your body can no longer do. One of the areas they're looking at is for people that have spinal issues where they're paralyzed on that. And they've been shown you've been able to move certain things. I saw a demonstration the other day where a person who had their hand, actually it looked like at the elbow, was probably amputated, and the hand was fully usable like anything else. And that was controlled by their thoughts through the electronic circuitry that was in there. And what was really interesting was they were able to pull the hand off the body, set it down, and still operate it. So it was crawling along by pulling itself, like Thing from the old TV show. But where I was sort of going with this is there's also the possibility of the human mind and AI at some point integrating. They say these are sort of the first baby steps, if you will. But think again, if we're 20, 25 years in the future, how much more integrated that could be. And there's some talk that it could sort of work in a combination between the brain and a separate processor to give humans extra intelligence to work at those higher speeds and capabilities of having access to whole the world's libraries or whatever else an AI may have. So essentially increasing the intelligence capabilities of individuals. That's not coming in the next couple of years, but a little bit more distant future. It is one of the possibilities. And again, how we use that, how it's implemented, will determine if it's good or bad. It'll have both positive and negative consequences. Doesn't mean it'll necessarily happen, but it's a possible future for us.
Thank you, Drake. Over to you, Denise.
Sorry, just 2 seconds. Immediately made me think of Total Recall when you talked about that, Drake, only because I love to vacation. And how cool would that be where you feel like you actually went on the vacation, you spent a fraction of the cost, but your mind thinks you actually went on that vacation. So anyway, just made me think of that movie.
Thank you.
Well, one of the questions that we were tossing around in preparation for this was, can AI challenge us, or will we improve? Like, can it actually help us become more wise? As one of the upsides. And we touched a bit upon, I think, the creative, Kevin brought up the creative dialogue, or as we sometimes call it, dialogic AI, that AI is challenging us to think better. And just in a recent experience, and this might be slightly terrifying, but some of my developers and I have built an AI that's basically me. So it's really quite creepy to interact with yourself, like basically an AI agent that speaks as me. So it's and it's based on things I've written over the last 30 years, and it's quite a large text collection. And I think it's now well over 600,000 words, and it's quite a bit, and it's fascinating. In some ways, it makes me feel that there's a little bit of my legacy that's not going to disappear. That I'd be run over by a bus here on Menzies Street tomorrow, but a little digital part of me would persist. More usefully is that having that as then a sounding board, almost like then asking various AI services to review and give you feedback on your own work. And the trajectory over time exhibited in there is really very useful. And it's, in some cases, it projected more accurately than I did the direction of my own doctoral research. I said, okay, now I'm kind of freaked out, but I'll stop there. So it can be, if challenged, it can in turn challenge you to learn more and reflect more deeply.
Wow. Thank you, Joe. Thank you. It's got me thinking. Yes, Kevin.
Have we got proof that this is the real Joe we're talking to?
We've come to the end of our discussion, and I agree with Drake, and I'd like to say that I see a merging of humans and AI is inevitable. It's just a question of time. May have a few speed bumps, but it just has to happen. And it should be an exciting and an interesting future to look out for. And I wonder where we'll be in maybe 200 years from now. Thank you very much, everyone. This has been an enlightening and a really deep, fascinating discussion. Thank you so much, and see you next time.
Thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe.